A couple of weeks after I had my first big experience of God on my 16th birthday, and if you want to hear more about that story, see the link in the description below, I was riding in the back seat of a friend's car, and I was looking out the window at the city around me, and it was hitting me that everything I was seeing was literally the form of God. I had seen that God had become all of this. Because if you think about it, there wasn't a Home Depot around for God to build the universe out of prior to the Big Bang. There was only God. And so everything that appeared with the Big Bang could only be God too. What else could it be? Similarly, when we have a dream at night and we create an entire world filled with colors and sounds and objects, did we build that world out of popsicle sticks and glue? No, the entire dream is made out of us. We took the form of the dream. The dream is purely a manifestation of us. And the very same thing is true of God and the universe. So I was staring out the window of the car, contemplating this, when my eyes refocused on the glass of the car window. And without thinking, I reached up and I touched it very gently, realizing that I was literally touching the face of God. Every single thing in the universe itself, is the living, self-aware form of God. And how incredibly precious that window glass seemed to me in that moment. How perfect, how sacred this piece of glass that God was pretending to be. God has appeared as all of this, but what does God look like when all of this doesn't exist, when there is no universe? That is a distinct aspect of God in my experience. It is God before anything existed. This is the aspect that the Buddhists are into. God without form. And when God is without form, we can't really call it God, can we? That would be like calling me a boss when I don't actually have any employees. The word boss only makes sense in relation to having employees. And similarly, the term God only makes sense in relation to a universe. If we get rid of the manifest universe, what is left? There's no me, no you, no world, no universe, not even a spiritual realm. There's nothing. What is left before that Big Bang? Just that primordial reality, which we could say is prior to God. I was shown that place when I was 17 years old, but it's not really a place, and I can't really say that I was shown it. The formless God cannot be known by a mind. To the contrary, it can only be seen when the mind disappears. And that's what happened to me when I was 17. For a moment, my mind was swallowed and seeing happened. But it didn't happen to my mind because mind wasn't there when it happened. And really, you don't see it. It sees you, so to speak. When you get out of the way far enough, when everything is out of the way, it sees itself. And when this seeing happened, it was like a hole was punched in the fabric of my mind, and through that hole, the awareness that is in the inside of this body was suddenly aware of the totality of awareness. The awareness in here was aware of awareness everywhere. And it was seen that they are the same awareness and always have been. They only appear to be separate to the mind as the mind looks at objects, but in reality, they aren't separate. There is only one awareness. What was seen was like an infinite awareness that is utterly blissful, utterly perfect. It occupies no space because it exists before space existed. It occupies no time because it is before time. And I really don't want to make this sound mystical or confusing, but I recognize that it's really hard for the mind to grasp what I'm saying. And it's hard for my mind too, and that's because really the mind cannot grasp this. The mind cannot grasp what is prior to form, prior to words, prior to space and time. The mind only exists after the Big Bang and with the Big Bang. The mind only exists when form exists. But before the Big Bang, there is no space, no form, no oxygen for the mind to breathe, so to speak. It was a startling revelation because everything collapsed instantly in the seeing of that space. All my sandcastles, the whole story of my life, all my goals, even my devotion to my spiritual teacher, my guru, completely collapsed and stopped making sense when that seeing happened. I didn't even understand what my guru was at that point. And the irony was that I believed it was only my association with my guru that had caused this revelation to happen. And it happened in an instant. 1 second I was contemplating a line out of a text I had written, and the next moment, poof. There was the awareness of that which is prior to God, that which has no form. Everything else has a form, but when we get rid of all form, no matter how subtle, I'm talking about even the spiritual dimension, even before that, what is left? Only this awareness remains. This awareness is God, but it's also beyond God. It's before God. And I think it might correspond to the Bible passage that talks about the Spirit of God when everything was formless and void and darkness was on the face of the deep. That line gives me chills, and it reminds me instantly of that experience when it happened when I was 17. The Hindus call it Brahman, the infinite formless absence that is yet utterly blissful, utterly perfect, utterly aware. And the Buddhists refer to it by many names as well. This is what existed before the Big Bang. It also exists after the Big Bang. It exists right now. It is our truest nature, the truest nature of all things, as all things are only appearing right now in it. It cannot be reached with the mind. It can only be reached by throwing the mind away, because it is before the mind, but it is also during the mind and after the mind. Most importantly, it is what you are. You are that. This highest level of reality that I'm talking about is your truest nature. At the end of the day, what I saw is that God never created a universe. God is only thinking about it. And that's what all of this is. All of this is just God thinking about a universe. And that's exactly what you and I are. God thinking about a you and an I.